go where no instructional designer has gone before. I can't see, but yeah, from... So Valerie, please introduce yourself. Looking forward to hearing about your work, and live long and prosper.
Let's back it up one. There we go. Hi, everyone. My name is Valerie Quezada. I am a learning and development manager at Takeda. This whole talk is about my prior position. So I did start out as an instructional designer, and I was a one-woman show while I was working on this initiative. So let me take you through some of our learning objectives for today. I'm hoping to show you my challenges, my successes, my struggles, and hopefully we can learn from each other today. Let's get started. Hang on, we're going to warp. We're going to be starting our presentation in 2016 and taking you to today's time. So, starting in 2016 to 2018, I was in school working on getting my master's in instructional design, and there was a class for emerging technology. Super interested in this, it grabbed my attention, and after graduation, the school had hosted a VR evening so that we could come back and learn about virtual reality and how it could help our learners. Fantastic. So I went ahead and took the dive and checked out what they offered. And one of the things that was there, of course, was some software applications to help me in my journey. So as I go along here, I am going to throw up some lessons learned as I was taking my journey. And in this case, knowing that you can work with outside resources like universities and being able to utilize what they already have started. So definitely an important part for me. When I was there, I learned about software called Scenario VR. And what was great about the software is that it allowed me to create immersive environments using 360 images and or video without any coding background. As you have noticed, I have no IT background whatsoever. So this was super important for me to be able to jump straight in and try something out. Another great ability of this software was being able to do something for free. So they do have a trial period, so I could jump in right away. The only thing I did need to purchase at the time was a 360 camera, an SD micro card, and a tripod, and I was ready to go. So now I have an opportunity to create a small project to share with my senior leadership, and what can that be? So lessons learned on this one too. So obviously I used the vendor immensely in the beginning. They're a great resource, and many of these vendors had communities that you could join and get questions asked or get that help that you needed. So it was fantastic for someone new like myself who had many questions and had no idea what they were doing half the time. I was Googling like crazy and obviously reaching out to the vendor for some help. So I went ahead and decided my first project would be a virtual tour of our manufacturing facility. And this was occurring in about the 2019 time period when I first launched this. So some good feedback. People were really excited about it, but they couldn't understand why. Why do you need a virtual tour? People just can come and visit us. True, we'll get to that point in just a second, but I did learn a lot when I did this project. So some big things that I did learn that I like to share are when you're working with 360 photos, there's some things you need to keep in mind. You definitely want to make sure that people are not moving. You get some weird streaks in the background that are very hard to edit. Some other things that you need to keep in mind is you don't want things being blocked if it's something you're trying to show in the background. Very hard to edit those types of things out. Another thing that I kept in mind is the placement of my camera. I'm not a very tall person, So I needed to make sure that when I set up my tripod, I did it at an average height so that I could get the perspective of an average person standing in VR and making sure that it wasn't looking up at images or looking down. Another thing to go with that is to make sure that things weren't floating, that I didn't put placement in there. And to help with that, I would make sure that as I was creating on the desktop, I would get into the headset at the same time and check the placement of all of the add-ons, my text, or any other types of things that I would add in to the software. The last thing is the accessibility. And what I mean by this is my learner. VR at this point is not accessible to certain types of learners. And what I mean by that is I'm talking about fonts and contrast. These are things that I could control to make it easier in the headsets for people to learn and not be distracted by not being able to see things. A lot of the equipment I'm working with is stainless steel, and a lot of my icons were getting lost. So I had to make sure I used colors that would contrast with that and make it easy for the person to find. So as I said, people thought it was cool, but why? Why do we need this? Well, end of 2019, we jumped into 2020, and all of a sudden they're like, where's the rest of this tour? We need this now. So I was able to obviously go back in, finish up the project, and it is being used to this day. I have many people that from all over the country that walk through our facility without ever stepping foot on the site. So great. Was super excited to be able to do this. My biggest lesson learned at this point was do not give up. It was all about timing. I just happened to be at the right place at the right time, and some silver lining for the pandemic was that this was needed now, when before it was never even a thought in anyone's mind. Great. So I get the software. What can I do for my learners now? That's why I really wanted to make some changes. So the first project that I worked on is something that a majority of our manufacturing technicians are involved in, with cleaning a piece of equipment. And for the most part, nobody had any background in what this piece of equipment did, where it's located, any of the safety, any of the terminology. And so what I did is I went in and I did 360 video this time instead of just images, and I was able to capture all of the safety. I could add in the terminology, and I could also put in the steps for the process. So before a person even needs to go to the floor, they have the ability to get into the headset and try this out, which helped reduce a lot of misunderstandings, because reading a standard operating procedure, an SOP, which is one of the main things that people do in my industry, is very confusing. So being able to actually see what they were going to be doing and not just read about it is a big deal. So some lessons learned on this slide. Video is a little bit different to work with than an image, and making sure that you have the right software to edit is super important. And I realized this a little too late, and I've since changed the software that I use, but originally when I went in and edited it, instead of having my 4K resolution, it dropped down to 720, which was not optimum for my learners. So now I make sure that I edit pretty much everything I do is in Photoshop or Premiere Pro. So I had to upskill on that as well. I'm not a graphic designer by nature either, so some new skill sets for myself. And I was a one-person show at this point. I did not have a team to help me with any of this. So what did my learners think of this? Well, I did do a survey and got some good feedback, but I decided to go out into the field and actually talk to some of the technicians and their managers. Here's some of what I saw and heard out there, which was amazing to see that what I was hoping would happen would happen. And one of my personal favorites up there was someone actually saying that they could actually understand the material without having to read the SOP and go out on the floor and really immerse themselves in it. So this is fantastic. Like, I couldn't ask for anything better at this point. My only thing that I am still dealing with, and it's a struggle, is trying to work on effectiveness monitoring for this beyond the survey, beyond going out and doing interviewing. I really want to get to that level 4 of effectiveness monitoring and be able to tie it back to the business strategy, which I think I've heard many people talk about throughout the last 2 days. People are struggling with this too, so I feel better. I'm not alone, and I'm hoping I will get there at some point. So, great. Got some great feedback. I'm ready for my next project. As I told you, I'm a one-woman show at this point. The next thing that I decided to do is help my learning and development team create something that would help the technical trainers on the floor. So currently at that time, they were having to do instructor-led training out on the floor, walking through manufacturing areas and laboratory areas, pointing out all the different safety features before they could get access to these areas. Well, great, that's great, but could I save these people time and make it more consistent? So what we did is I brought in a person in the team, started to train them on using this software, and we each created one of these safety walkthroughs for the manufacturing and for the QC areas. So it went very well, but it took probably more time than I thought because coaching a new person on new software, he did a great job, but the instructional design aspect of it, he didn't have that background. So I definitely needed to jump in and support that. So the other thing that came up during this is, okay, this is great, the software is great, but why isn't this a simulation? Why isn't it like what I've seen when we put on the headsets and it's more like a game? And I did look into this. I did have time at one point in my life before I became a manager and was able to research if I could be able to create simulations. Well, not so much. I realized it was way over my head, not worth the time at this point in my life to relearn a whole new way. And so I went ahead and stuck with what I knew, and I'll leave that type of coding for the experts out there. So we went ahead and launched this. Some metrics I was able to get from this one is the savings on my people's time. So instead of them having to stop and do this training, they were able to do other things now and was able to save. This is something that's happening every year. So this is savings on time that I will be able to give back to my team every year now. And we are looking for other opportunities similar to this. But this was a really big one for our facility. Okay, so I have a handful of projects. Now it's time to really focus on the hardware. What do we pick? There are so many vendors out there. As you can see from the expedition floor, there's a lot going on out there. So I did bring in a bunch of different headsets for us to test out. And this is where I got super friendly with my IT folks. Like I said, I do not have that IT background, and I needed to make sure that it would work with our systems. And so I partnered with my IT department, and we narrowed it down to the Quest 2 at this point. And it's been a good product for us. We are still working on integrating it into certain things, but we're getting there. And with this new Quest for Business, we're hoping that will take us over the finish line. Okay, so now I have my software, and I have projects created. I've decided on some hardware. Now, how do I engage the rest of my management team, my senior leaders, to help drive this culture? Because we've been hearing a lot about that. You know, a lot of change. My facility, for example, has been around for 70 years. There's a lot of people that have been there for at least 30 years. So lots of differences in the way people want to learn and the things that I can provide to them. And I really did want to use this tool to help them. So I did create an open house to have my management come in and test it out. For the most part, my team of senior managers, were about 16 of them. I think one of them had been in a headset. So a lot of them were skeptical. Some of them thought they were getting nauseated. But once I started getting them in there, we were getting some major smiles. And they could see what I was been talking about on how it can help our learners retain the knowledge and not just have to sit there and read document after document, or what the shiny new apple had been going on for the last few years is those e-learnings, clicking those e-learnings. So now that I have my stakeholders on board with this, and they weren't nauseous, by the way. I haven't had one person get nauseous in the headset, so that was fabulous. And I do monitor that, though. It is something that I do watch over because I know that VR is not for everyone. So I do make sure that everything I do is in a responsive way so that if they need to do it on a desktop or a tablet, they do have that ability to do it. They don't have to do it in the headset. So this is where my story is going to take a little bit of a twist. So we're at 2022 now, and I was given the opportunity in October of last year to turn my training offices into an experience center, what I call the Digital Experience Center, or DXC for short. So I was given free rein on redecorating this room and bringing in technology to help teach to my facility some new tech to help drive that culture of change. So of course, I again did bring in my IT partners to help me with this. We had a very short timeline. I had about 5 weeks to get the room turned around and to get the tech in place. So very, very quick. It's funny what a blank check will do though, right? So this is the one and only time that I will probably ever have that opportunity. But it was great. So what you see in this picture is it's all modular. I can grow with the room. On my right-hand side, I have Oculuses set up. I do have a digital board for workshops in the room. I have a dog, Taki. He is an AI dog made by Sony, who's pretty cool, and we did a naming contest for him. And then some other things you don't see in the room is I have a Vesta board that does announcements, and slowly but surely I'll be bringing in other things as needed. So just something to remember from my lessons learned is I definitely needed IT here to support this. We've been hearing that over and over again the last few days, and I don't know what I would do without my IT partners. They have been amazing, working with me side by side and making sure that anything that I do will be supported by our facility, by our company. So, some things to come. Also, what's going on in another room, I was given 2 rooms back to back. I haven't done anything as fancy in the other room. It wasn't worth a picture. But I do have an HTC Vive system set up in that room for simulation. That was a project done with my global partners. And so I am using it, but it's not perfect right now. They did just cater it to one part of the business, but what I was able to do is get the hardware so that when we are ready to go with simulation that will support more of my site, I'll be ready. The room is set up and ready to go. And the other thing that I have been working on is with an outside vendor is a new hire orientation project to onboard new employees. So we recently just got the Oculus 3. The shipment actually arrived last week. Barely got them out of the boxes. So I'll be playing with them more next week. But that project is going to be helping to reduce that instructor-led training and hopefully bring in a culture element that will really showcase what our company is about. So I'm hoping for that one to go live in 2024. So I do work at a local level, but I do have some global support. It can be a rough ride sometimes, but I do try to do what I can do locally to help drive my innovation at the site level. And then when I can use the global resources, I definitely do. We do have a global extended reality group, and whenever I can partner with that group, it's amazing. It's always super helpful, and I learn a lot from them. So, things to remember. You don't want to get caught in the black hole. From my journey, it looks like I've had a lot of great outcomes, but I still am struggle. I do have some struggles that I deal with. One of those being the ability to create content. Like I said, I was a one-woman show until recently. Now I'm managing a team, but they are not upskilled to the level where they can create content, and I've had a lot of other business priorities come first that they need to support. So my hope at the time was to be able to create maybe a project a month. I've been lucky to get one project out since taking over this management role, which is probably better than nothing. But I do hope that next year I can really focus on this and or get budget to help support this initiative. The second thing that's been a struggle, and I'm hoping when we get into Meta Business, which is hopefully launching soon, they keep saying it's coming, is connecting everything to my LNMS. Because I live in a very regulated community in the pharma business, I need to be able to document everyone's training. And doing this tying this in to my VR headsets has been quite the challenge. I've been having to do a little bit of workarounds and maybe a little bit extra work on my learners to make this work. But I'm hoping next year that will be the change and we'll really be able to dive in. My ultimate goal, we'll see when I can get there, my vision was eventually these headsets would be on the manufacturing floor and could be used at will to do their training. We're not there yet, but I'm hoping it's not too far away. The other thing that I have been definitely not struggling with, but having moments of pause is I'm glad I did something. I'm not going as fast as I hoped, but at least I did start somewhere, and what I have done so far has been great. So definitely you need to start somewhere. Analysis paralysis is real, and just a little bit of movement is something better than nothing. So in my world, it takes a dedicated team to explore these uncharted technologies, especially in a learning and development group, which I sit under the learning and development. We don't sit under HR. We sit under something called business excellence. And being able to collaborate with extraordinary teammates and create these amazing experiences has been a great journey for me and a passion. And I'm hoping to continue it for the unforeseeable future, even if it is going to be a slow go. Thank you very much for your time. I'd love to chat about all of this with you. I have my information up. Please feel free to walk up to me. You can't miss the hat. I may not wear the whole uniform here, but I'll definitely wear the hat. So if you'd like to chat, please feel free.
Well, time for one question, if that's okay. Anybody would like to give Valerie?
Hey, it's Andy Cruz with Halion, and I wanted to know more what you had to go through to get the headsets connected to the LMS. That's something that I've been really thinking about lately.
You mean for purchasing the headsets or talking?
To connect to the LMS.
To connect to the LMS. So my IT partners are quite smart, and what they've been able to do recently is they are able to do a URL that directly ties them in to the LMS, and then they just log in, which can be a struggle on the headset. So it's not optimum at this point, but it's at least something, so they don't have to do it twice. Originally what they were doing is doing it in the headset and then going to a desktop to actually sign off, which is not the perfect way of doing things. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Valerie.
Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. You just need to take your mic to the front of this, if you can. Okay, so just give us 1 minute to